What is up, guys? My name is Lex. Welcome back to my poker vlog. We are here in Las Vegas, Nevada, playing at the Bellagio, playing 10-20, no limit, buying in for $5,000. This is the biggest game I've ever played in my entire life. We're going to be playing with a $40 straddle. The pots are going to get massive. Let's get right into the action. Our very first hand of the session, we look down at ace queen offsuit, playing 5-handed. The cutoff makes it 60. I put in the 3-bet. I'm going to be 3-betting or folding a lot from this position. I make it $240. The big blind thinks about his action for a little bit of time and decides to fold. And the cutoff, snap fold, so we end up taking down our first pot here. When taking bigger shots at different games that you're not normally used to playing, it's always nice to win a couple pots early on to feel more comfortable playing the stakes. Next up, we're playing 6-handed now. There's an under the gun +1 open to 60. I have king, queen of spades next to act and decide to 3-bet. I make it $180. Folds back around to the initial raiser who makes the call. 10-10 queen with 1 spade on the flop. Pretty good board for us. When he checks to me, I put out a smaller bet here. I put out $120. My opponent doesn't think for too long and makes the fold. So another pot, small pot, but we are going in the right direction here. After this hand, we're playing 8-handed now, and we decide to bump up the stakes. We're going to play 10-20 with a $40 mandatory straddle. This is going to get big. I have ace-jack offsuit on the button. There's a raise to $120. I make the call. The player who raised is the only player at the table who I do feel like I have an edge on. The flop comes out 10 high with 2 spades. Middle position player puts out a bet of $140, and with my overcards, backdoor straight draw, and backdoor flush draw, and ace high, I decide to make the call. Going to the turn, which is the deuce of spades, does give us a ton of outs here. Now we have a gut shot straight draw, the nut flush draw, and 2 overcards to the board. When my opponent checks to me, I put him on a pair under the 10, so I'm going to start a bluff here. I'm going to bet small on the turn and look to bet huge on the river, trying to polarize myself for having a flush. I bet $200 and my opponent makes a call. Looking to hit one of our outs on the river, which we do not get. It's the 9 of diamonds, and when my opponent checks to me, I'm going to go for it here. I did not bet the turn to give up on the river. I have the ace of spades, which is a great card to have. That means that I'm the only player that can really have the nut flush here, and I don't expect my opponent to c-bet the flop, turn a flush, and then check it over to me. So I think he most likely has a pair underneath the 10, or possibly a weak 10, so I go big. I make a bet of $820. With this $40 straddle on, we're playing the biggest game of our career, and I am pulling a pretty big bluff here, $820 with just ace high. My opponent counts out his chips, and now my heart starts to race. On the outside, I'm trying to look cool, calm, and collected, and on the inside, my adrenaline is pumping, my heart's beating, my breath, I'm trying to keep it under control. It's about 68 degrees inside the Bellagio, but it feels like 110. I am nervous. My opponent goes into the tank for a while. He asks for a count. It's $820. He pulls out 8 black chips and 1 orange chip. Looks like he's going to call. Then he puts it back in his stack and looks back at his cards. At first, I thought I was going to get picked off here. And then I thought, well, I think he's going to make the fold. He tanks for over 2 minutes and decides to let it go. So we end up taking down a pretty big pot here, bluffing it off with ace high and getting it through. It always feels amazing to get a bluff through, especially in a big game when you're taking a shot. This game is 4 times bigger than the normal stakes I play in Florida, and as you guys are going to see, the pots get pretty big. Next up, I'm in the under the gun position with the $40 straddle on, looking down at pocket jacks. The button makes it $120, and the small blind, the same player from last hand, puts in a 3-bet. He makes it $470. When the big blind folds, the action's on me, and I think this is a spot I should always be 4-betting or folding. I don't really want to be calling $470 and letting the button come in behind me with a good price, or letting the button put in a re-raise and have to fold pocket jacks pre-flop. Most of these players have pretty solid ranges pre-flop, which means that the button can be opening up with a wide range of hands, and the small blind could be 3-betting with a wider range of hands. So I'm going to put in the cold 4-bet. I'm going to raise it up. I make it $1,200. The button quickly releases his hand, which is a relief to me. However, the small blind asks for a count, and when the dealer's counting out, I'm actually rooting for a fold here. I would be totally fine taking down over $600 here with pocket jacks. I don't really want to go to a flop where I could get outflopped by hands like ace queen, pocket 10s, pocket 9s, ace king, king queen. So I'm rooting for a fold. My opponent thinks for about 30 seconds and lets it go. So we end up getting this cold 4-bet through with pocket jacks and take down another pretty big pot. $600 going our way without even seeing a flop. We are up over about $1,000 now, but for the next hour, we don't really play any significant hands until we get pocket kings. There's an under the gun +2 open to $120. I 3-bet next to act 2, $380 with pocket kings. My opponent makes the call. We're heads up to the flop of queen, jack, 7, 2 hearts. We flop an overpair here. Whenever he checks it to me, I decide to check this one back for pot control and for deception. The turn card is the 9 of hearts, which is a pretty bad card. Now we're losing to straights, some flushes, 2 pairs, and sets. So when he checks to me, I decide to continue to pot control and check this one back. Going to the river, which is the 6 of hearts, giving us the king high flush, the second best hand possible. When my opponent checks to me, I'm going to go for some value here with my king high flush. I'm going to try to get called by a smaller heart. I put out a bet of $320. He does not think for too long before making the call. We show pocket kings for the king high flush, and it is good to scoop down another pot here. Playing big game, 10, 20, 40 at Bellagio. Our first day in Vegas going pretty well. I shared this hand with my friend and he said he ran it through a solver and I should be betting 1/3 pot on the flop, 1/3 on the turn, and actually checking back this river. And it's always good to go back and review your hands after your session and try to get better. This game is huge for me. Like I said, 4 times bigger than my normal stakes. So I did play pretty passive. I did pot control a lot, but the board was scary in a 3-bet pot. It's always good to look back and learn from your mistakes. Next up, the $40 straddle still on. I have ace jack of diamonds and under the gun plus 3. There's an under the gun plus 1 open to $120. I 3-bet to $380 and he makes the call. Heads up to a 10 high flop. No diamonds. We completely miss. I decide to check this one back. The turn card checks all the way through in the river. My opponent leads out for over $400. Not much I can do here with ace high. I let this one go. About half an hour goes by before it folds to me on the button. I look down at king jack of spades. What a beautiful sight. I raise it up to $120 before the small blind, a very tough pro, makes it $500. My hand is way too strong to fold. I could be 4-betting here sometimes, but this time I decide to make the call. Heads up to 7, 4, 3 with 2 hearts. This is not the board we were looking to see. My opponent puts out a bet of $700 and I just make the snap fold. Not much I can do there with king jack of spades. And as you guys can tell, this game is playing massive. We just 3-bet to $380. We just called a $500 3-bet. And with the blinds coming around every single orbit, we were up $1,000. Now we're stuck about $500 on the session. I then get moved to the main game before I look over at seat 8's chips. He has 7 to 8 flag $5,000 chips, plus a lot of black chips. That is over $40,000 sitting right next to me. And if you guys told me 3 years ago that I'd be playing a poker session with someone with over $40,000 in his chip stack, I would tell you there is no way. But we are here in Las Vegas at the Bellagio playing the biggest game in the city right now. Now all we got to do is make a hand and win a big pot. 2 limps. I make it $120 in the big blind with ace king. Now the first player puts in a limp re-raise. He makes it $380. Can I see how much you have?
I'm from Madagascar. Are you all allowed 3 to sit in the same? I'll move over there and get that order. Too much guys over there.
Alright, let's do it. What do you want to do, once or twice? Pretty good.
How about now?
I have ace. I decide to go all in here with ace king, and my opponent snap calls for $1,500 and shows pocket kings. We end up getting lucky and hitting an ace on the flop to take down our first pot here in about 2 hours. We're up about $200 now, moving on to the last hand of the night. The hand right before this one, the villain opened up the button. I 3-bet the small blind and he made the fold. Now one hand later, he opens up the cutoff to $60. I have pocket queens on the button and raise it up to $180. Now the action's back on him. He puts in a re-raise. He makes it $560. We do have the 3rd best hand you can ever have pre-flop. My opponent could be bluffing here with some ace-high hands, maybe king-queen offsuit, possibly ace-king. He can also have aces, kings, and queens. So against that range, we're most likely flipping or we're totally dominated. So I don't really want to get all in for $5,000 against that particular range. So I end up thinking for a little bit of time with about $5,000 in my stack. I decide to make the call for $560. I haven't flopped a set yet in this session, so how about a black queen on the flop? And the dealer must have been listening to my prayers. She puts out a board of queen 8 deuce 2 clubs. We flop top set in a 4-bet pot with over $5,000 left to play for. My opponent does not slow down. He continues to bet. He puts out a bet of $320. I am in heaven here. I almost feel as good as I do after getting an hour-long Asian massage. I look back at my hand and just make sure I still have it. I'm trying to keep cool, calm, and collected. I go back and forth whether I should raise or just call, and I think keeping his bluffs in on this board would be good. I wanted to let him continue barrel on the turn, so I make the call for $360, going to the turn card, which is the 10 of spades. We don't have the nuts anymore. Jack 9 does make a straight, but I don't think my opponent's ever going to have that hand. He thinks for about 20 seconds and continues to bet. He bets $1,200. After seeing this bet, I looked down at my stack with about $4,200 remaining. There's only two options. I can either raise all in or just make the call, and I don't think trapping on this board is ideal. I want to try to get the max from aces and kings before any scare card comes out, and if he has a big combo draw like ace king of spades, ace queen of spades, ace jack of clubs, I want to try to charge him the max while I'm still ahead. So I contemplate my options, think for about 30 seconds, and go all in.
All in.
The cutoff player is not happy with this spot. He ends up tanking forever. I'm obviously praying for a call here. If we get a call and we hold up, this will be the biggest pot I've ever won in my life. Over $10,000. My opponent thinks for a while, contemplates his options, goes back and forth, and ultimately decides to...
Get him on the block, Henry.
Huh?
Get him on the block. You made the block.
Yay.
Congratulations.
You'll see what I had.
The cutoff player ends up making a good fold there, but we still end up winning a pretty sizable pot, flopping top set in a 4-bet pot with pocket queens. That is the last significant hand we end up playing on the session. We end up racking up our chips, coloring up our chips, and heading out for the night. Alright guys, that is it for this session. Playing our first session here in Vegas at the Bellagio, one of my favorite poker rooms in the country. Playing 10-20 with a $40 straddle. Probably the biggest game I've ever played. I played some 10-20 in Florida, but this one was big. Massive raise sizes of $120. I used to buy into 1-2 for that much money a couple of years ago, so pretty wild how the stakes have escalated throughout my poker career and even on this vlog as well. The game was tough. Probably one of the toughest games I've ever played. Really tough lineup, some really good players. Not many people getting out of line, not many action players either, but I just tried to grind it through. I tried not to make any big mistakes. I got one nice bluff through there with the ace jack, with the ace of spades, and then I just tried to pick my spots well, tried to 3-bet a couple times in position, and bloat some pots with some premium hands, and then finally, after about 6 hours of playing, we flopped top set in a 4-bet pot. Ended up winning like over $2,000 in that hand, which was super nice. We ended up in the game for $5,000, cashing out for $75.71 for a profit of $2,571. So I will take it. About 6 hours of play, our first vlog here in Vegas. I'm excited. 10-20 feels pretty good. Didn't feel that crazy. I didn't feel out of my league. The players were definitely good, that is for sure, but I didn't feel like I didn't belong. So I'm excited to bring you guys throughout Vegas and show you guys all the different poker rooms and all my sessions as well. Hope you guys enjoy these videos. If you do, hit that like and subscribe button, comment down below, and until next time, I'll see ya.